The gift bag was pale yellow with a white satin ribbon. I remember that detail because everything else about that afternoon was pink. The balloons, the tablecloth, the little paper roses my sister had spent 2 evenings making by hand. But the bag Diane set on the gift table was yellow, pale, deliberate, out of place. She placed it right in the center, not tucked between the others. Center. My name was written on the card in her perfect handwriting. Nora. Not Nora and Daniel, just me. I was 34 weeks along. My feet were tired. I'd been awake since 5 in the morning because our daughter had discovered she could press her feet directly into my side. And standing in that living room full of women who loved me, my mother, my sister, my 3 closest friends, my aunt who'd driven 4 hours, I genuinely believed that the worst thing that could happen that afternoon was that the baby name we'd chosen would leak before the announcement. I was wrong, but I didn't know that yet. So I smiled at the yellow bag and I said, "Diane, you didn't have to." She smiled back and said, "I know, but I wanted to." My name is Nora. I've been married to Daniel for 6 years. We met at a conference. He was presenting research, I was taking notes for my department. And within 40 minutes of conversation, I knew he was the kind of person I wanted to be around for a long time. He's patient, honest, and funny in a quiet way that sneaks up on you. He is also the son of Diane Caldwell. Diane is, and I want to be precise here because this story deserves precision, a complicated woman. She's intelligent, she's socially gifted in the way that certain people are, the kind where they can make you feel chosen and warm and important right up until they need something from you. She has a talent for generosity that always seems to arrive with a receipt attached. When Daniel and I got engaged, she threw us a dinner. Lovely. When we bought our house, she sent flowers. Beautiful. When I shared the news that a baby was coming, she cried happy tears at the announcement lunch and held my hand across the table and said, "I have always wanted a daughter." I believed her. That was my mistake. Not innocence exactly, more like a kind of hope I hadn't quite managed to give up yet. The baby shower was on a Saturday in October. My sister Clara had planned everything with the care of someone who genuinely loves planning things. A charcuterie spread, 3 kinds of sparkling juice, a photo wall with pictures from the months before Ren arrived, a guessing game, a little station where guests could write wishes for the baby on cards shaped like stars. Diane arrived precisely on time, not early, not late, in a cream blazer and heels. She kissed my cheek, she complimented the decorations, she placed the yellow bag on the table and found her seat. And for the first hour, everything was lovely. We ate, we laughed. My aunt told a story about my mother's time before I was born that I had never heard before, and everyone cried a little. Clara announced the baby's name, Ren, Eleanor, and the room responded the way you hope a room full of people who love you will respond. And then it was time for gifts. I opened them in order, starting from the left side of the table. A handmade quilt from my mother, a ready-to-go delivery bag kit from my friend Priya, a box of tiny onesies, a rocker from Daniel's colleagues that he'd arranged ahead of time. The yellow bag was near the end. I picked it up and the ribbon slipped through my fingers, and I pulled back the tissue paper and found a binder. It was white, the kind you'd use for a school project, with a label on the front printed in clean font. 47 reasons Nora is not right for my son. I laughed, genuinely, because my brain decided in that first second that it had to be a joke, some kind of elaborate roast, the kind Clara might organize, something we'd all laugh about later. I looked up at Clara. She wasn't laughing. She was looking at Diane. Diane was sitting with her hands folded in her lap, watching me with an expression I can only describe as patient, like she'd been waiting a long time for this moment and was prepared to wait a little longer. "It's not what you think," she said into the silence that had settled over the room. "It's a gift. Go ahead and read it." I should have closed it. I know that now. I should have set it down quietly, thanked everyone for coming, and made a phone call to my husband. That would have been the right move. Instead, I opened it to the first page. The first reason was she prioritizes her career over family values. I had stepped away from work 3 weeks earlier at that point. The second reason was she has never shown genuine interest in Daniel's extended family. Diane's extended family held a reunion every year that she personally told me was not worth the drive. By reason 5, she keeps secrets and is emotionally unavailable. My hands had started to shake. My mother stood up. My mother is a woman of considerable composure. She taught middle school for 27 years. She has seen situations. But she stood up at my baby shower and said, in a voice I had never heard her use before, "Diane, I'd like you to explain what you think you're doing." Diane didn't move. "I'm giving my son's wife a gift of honesty. I've tried other approaches. This seemed clearer." "This is a party," my mother said, "for Nora. You are a guest. I am family." The distinction apparently was meaningful to her. What happened next I remember in fragments. Priya took the binder from my hands. My aunt touched my arm. Clara moved toward Diane and said something in a low voice I couldn't hear. Two of the other guests, women I knew mostly from neighborhood events, gathered their bags quietly and found somewhere else to be. I didn't cry, I want to be honest about that, not because I was strong, but because I was too far past the kind of shock that produces tears. I was in the other kind of shock, the still, cold kind, where your mind starts filing things away very carefully, noting details the way it does when it understands that what is happening is serious. There was a sealed page at the back of the binder, a single white sheet folded in thirds and taped shut, with a typed label, Reason 48, to be opened by Daniel only. I did not open it. I looked at Diane and said very quietly, "You need to go." She said, "You'll thank me eventually." She picked up her bag, smoothed her blazer, and walked out the door. Daniel called me 3 times while I was driving home. I didn't answer, not because I was angry at him, I wasn't, not yet, but because I needed to hold what had happened in my own hands for a few minutes before I handed it to someone else. I sat in the driveway for a long time. I watched a bird land on the mailbox and leave. I felt Ren move, a slow roll under my side, and I pressed my hand to my side and I thought, I will not let this become the story of how she was born. Then I went inside. Daniel was in the kitchen. He took one look at me and knew. I set the binder on the counter between us. He didn't touch it at first. He read the cover label, and his face did something I had never quite seen it do before, a kind of collapse, very brief, before he pulled it back. "She gave this to you at the shower?" he said. Not a question. In front of everyone. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I'm going to call her." "There's a sealed page," I told him. "At the back. She wrote your name on it." He opened the binder. He turned through the pages with careful hands, his jaw set, reading things his mother had written about his wife while his wife was 7 months along. He didn't comment on each page. I didn't need him to. When he reached the sealed sheet, he paused. "She told me to save it for you," I said. "I haven't opened it." He looked at me for a moment, then he peeled back the tape. I watched his face as he read. It took approximately 90 seconds. Whatever he had been expecting, it wasn't this. He read it twice, he set it on the counter, he went to the window and stood with his back to me, and I could see the muscles in his shoulders working through his shirt. "Daniel," I said. He turned around, and I saw something I had never seen on my husband's face in 6 years of marriage. He looked like a man who had just realized that someone he loved had been lying to him for a long time. "She owes us money," he said. I need to explain something about Daniel's family finances because this part matters. When Daniel's father was gone 8 years ago, he left behind a modest collection of assets, the house where Diane still lived, a small investment account, and a sum of money, $60,000, that was left in a trust to be divided equally between Daniel and his sister, Rachel. Diane was named as account manager. Rachel got her portion 4 years ago when she bought her first home. She told Daniel at the time that the transfer process had been smooth, if slow. Daniel had never touched his portion. He hadn't needed it. He told me once that he decided to leave it until we needed it for something meaningful, a down payment upgrade or the children's education. He checked in with his mother about it periodically, and she always said the same thing. It's there, it's safe, don't worry. He had believed her. Reason 48 was not a reason to end our marriage. It was a bank statement. Diane had typed a brief paragraph, just 4 sentences, and attached a printout of a statement from the trust account. The paragraph read, in substance, "Daniel, you should know that your wife borrowed against the money your father left you without telling you. I have been trying to protect you." Enclosed is proof that $47,000 was accessed from the trust 18 months ago. I thought you deserved to know the kind of person you married. The account balance on the statement was $13,200. The original balance should have been, at minimum, $60,000. Daniel had made no transfer. I had made no transfer. There was only one person with authority over that account. He called Rachel that night. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea I didn't drink and listened to one side of a phone call that lasted 40 minutes. Rachel's voice was audible through the phone. I couldn't make out words, but I could hear the tone shift from confusion to something sharper. She had received her portion 4 years ago. She had no idea the account had been accessed since. She had no idea what the current balance was. She said she would call her legal counsel in the morning. Daniel called his mother when he hung up with Rachel. Diane did not answer. She didn't answer the next morning either, or the afternoon after that. She texted Daniel on the third day, "I was trying to protect what's yours. I will explain everything when you've calmed down." Daniel texted back 4 sentences. I won't reproduce them here, but one of them included the word legal counsel. Here is what we learned over the next 6 weeks, piece by piece, with the help of Daniel's family legal counsel and a financial investigator that Rachel's legal counsel brought in. Diane had been managing the trust since her husband was gone. In the first years, everything appeared to be handled correctly. Rachel's transfer was clean and properly documented. But Diane had, over the following years, developed what the accountant described as a pattern of unauthorized transfers, beginning small and becoming larger. The total removed without authorization over 4 years was approximately $44,000. The money had gone to 2 places: personal expenses, home repairs, travel, outstanding personal debts, and a private loan she had made to her younger brother, a man we had met perhaps twice, who ran a small business that had been struggling for years. She had not told Daniel. She had not told Rachel. She had simply decided that the money was available and that she would manage it quietly and replace it eventually, a plan that had not, as it turned out, progressed beyond intention. The bank statement she had tucked in the binder, attached to an accusation against me, was a statement showing the account's current diminished balance. The implication that I had taken the money was, to be direct, invented. There was no transaction in my name. There was no transaction Daniel had authorized. The statement existed because Diane wanted a document that looked alarming and could be pointed at me before anyone had time to read it carefully. She had brought it to my baby shower. She had put it in a binder with 47 other grievances and placed it in a yellow gift bag with a white ribbon and set it in the center of the gift table. I want to pause here because I've thought about this a great deal. Diane's plan, and it was a plan, assembled over some period of time, required that I open the binder, read the list, be made to feel small in front of the people who loved me, and that Daniel would subsequently receive the sealed page, read the accusation, and have his trust in me shaken before he had time to investigate. In that version of events, Daniel would confront me. I would deny it. There would be documents. There would be doubt. A marriage already stretched by the arrival of a first child might not survive the weight of that kind of suspicion, especially if his mother was there, consistently offering comfort and her version of events. What she did not calculate for was the sealed page being opened that same night by a man who had watched his wife sit through 47 insults and choose dignity over collapse, and who approached the accusation not with suspicion, but with a clarity that said,
If my mother wrote this, I need to understand why. She did not calculate for the Rachel's legal counsel, who had retained copies of the original trust documents. She did not calculate for a financial investigator who, as Daniel later told me with a quiet sort of wonder, could trace 4 years of irregular transactions in less than a week. She did not calculate for the fact that her evidence against me was her own evidence against herself. The legal process took most of a year. Rachel pursued civil repayment. Daniel joined the claim. The amount Diane was required to repay, including interest and legal costs, came to just over $58,000. She did not have it available in cash. She had the house. I will not detail the specifics because some of that belongs to Daniel and Rachel and to family grief that I don't have the right to fully narrate. I will say that there were conversations, long, difficult, important conversations about what accountability looks like when the person who wronged you is someone you love. Daniel is not a person who celebrates consequences, neither is Rachel. What they wanted more than money was an acknowledgement that what Diane had done was wrong, not a strategic apology, not an explanation framed as protection, a real acknowledgement. They are still waiting for that. The financial settlement was reached. The house was not lost. Diane arranged a payment plan against its home value. The relationship between Daniel and his mother is, and I choose this word deliberately, careful now. Present, but careful. There are phone calls, there are occasionally visits. There's a distance in him when she's in the room that I don't think will entirely close. He does not blame himself for having trusted her. It took him a while to arrive at that, but he got there. Wren Eleanor was born on a Tuesday in December, 17 days after her due date, in a tremendous hurry after a very long morning. She was 7 pounds, 4 ounces. She has Daniel's eyes and what my mother immediately identified as the family expression I make when I'm thinking hard about something. Diane was not there when Wren arrived. My mother was. Clara was. Priya drove 2 hours and arrived 20 minutes after Wren did and stood in the doorway of the room with her hands over her mouth for a long time. Daniel held Wren for about an hour before he said a single word. When he finally spoke, he said, "Hi, I'm your dad. We've been waiting for you." I cried then, the good kind. There's something I've thought about more than anything else in the time since the baby shower. It's the yellow bag. Diane chose yellow because she knew we'd chosen a gender-neutral nursery theme, muted yellows and sage green, something we'd mentioned at a family dinner months before. She used the nursery color. She put it in the center of the gift table. She arrived on time, not early, so there was no chance for anyone to pull the bag aside and ask questions. She planned it. And I find that I am no longer angry about it, not in the hot, immediate way I was in those first weeks. What I feel now is closer to something like clarity, not about Diane specifically, but about a thing I now understand more fully than I did before. People who need to control others often do it through the language of protection. They are protecting you from a person, from a truth, from your own bad judgment. The protection is always framed as love, and the love is always conditional, contingent on compliance, on gratitude, on not looking too closely at what they are doing while your attention is elsewhere. Diane believed she was protecting Daniel. That belief was probably genuine in whatever way beliefs born from self-interest can be genuine. She believed she knew what was good for her son better than he did. She believed her management of the trust was a temporary situation she'd resolve eventually. She believed that if she could just remove me from the picture, through doubt, through damage, everything would return to the shape she'd envisioned. What she did not calculate for was her son choosing his own shape. Daniel and I are, well, I want to be careful not to make this sound too simple than it is. A year like the one we had doesn't leave you unchanged. There were nights in those early months when Wren was feeding at 2 in the morning, and the settlement was still unsettled, and Daniel was quieter than usual, and I would look at him and know that he was carrying something that I couldn't lift for him. But there were also Saturday mornings when Wren discovered she could make a particular sound, a kind of delighted squeal, and Daniel would look over her head with an expression that was simply happiness, clear and simple and his. We are building something. That's the best way I know to say it. We're building something, and we know now what the foundation is made of, which is more than a lot of people can say. Last spring, I was sorting through some things in the nursery and I found a card that had been tucked into one of the baby shower gifts, one of the star-shaped wish cards from the little station Clara had set up. I don't know how it ended up in the bag, maybe Clara slipped it in without realizing. It said, "May she always know she is loved without conditions." I put it in a frame. It's on the shelf in Wren's room, between the small green plant Daniel picked out and the knit elephant my aunt made. We read it to her sometimes, the way you read small truths to small people before they're old enough to need them. She'll need it eventually, everyone does, but we'll be ready. That part I'm certain of. If you stayed through this story, thank you. If there's someone in your life who has felt what Nora felt, or who is still trying to figure out how to hold on to their own truth inside someone else's version of events, share this with them. Sometimes the most important thing isn't what gets said in the room, it's what gets opened later, carefully, by someone who actually loves you.